Ubers, taxis, and Lyfts, oh my! Chances are everyone watching has taken a ride. Tonight we're going to introduce you to someone who says she was really taken for a ride. Carol Marine and students with the DePaul Center for Journalism, Integrity, and Excellence have been investigating complaints about unscrupulous drivers and what the city is doing to protect riders. Carol.
Paris, Chicago is anticipating a flood of tourists coming to the city for the Democratic National Convention next year, and of course Lollapalooza and NASCAR this summer. Locals and tourists who depend on rideshare apps and taxis to get around need to do so with their eyes wide open about how they're being driven and charged. Just ask Terry Khalil.
I decided I was taking a mini vacation, going from Minnesota to Chicago, and just be a tourist.
Like, for instance, going to Wrigley Field. Her trip began July 15th, 2022. Terry Khalil walked out of Union Station and into what she thought was a Chicago cab. Some 10 minutes later, she arrived, she says, at her hotel just off the Mag Mile and paid her fare.
He asked for my card, he ran it through Square, and I was off. Nothing out of the ordinary.
Until a short time later at dinner.
I'm sitting at dinner and I get an alert from my bank about a $240-some charge. And my stomach did a flip-flop.
People are getting quite brazen now.
It's no surprise to Joe Schwieterman, DePaul professor of public policy and transportation.
One of the bigger problems we're just seeing now is after events, when there's surges, to have unlicensed drivers, fake taxis, Ubers pulling up, offering people rides. They're often signage, fake signage, and people jump in out of a sense of trust.
Khalil filed a taxicab complaint and sent it to the city's Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection, the BACP.
I sent them all of the information I sent to the city, and then I got a response from the city.
This is the letter she received stating there is not enough information to identify the driver. And this is where our story takes a very sharp turn. In February, the city issued a warning about fake taxis, saying its Bureau of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection would process, investigate, and prosecute complaints that were filed on its website or complaints filed with 311. In her case, Terry Khalil gave the city the driver's name and address from her receipt. It read, Khalid Mahmoud, located in Orland Park. Using data supplied by the Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection, our students found 9 formal complaints filed in just the last year linked to the name Khalid Mahmoud, including a June 26, 2022 ride from Soldier Field to the Intercontinental Hotel following a Kenny Chesney concert, price tag $250. And an August 7, 2022 one-block ride for $236. In the database we examined, 3 other complaints filed with the city included license plate numbers, which go back to this Orland Park address and the name Khalid Mahmoud. We visited that Orland Park address, where a man who identified himself as Khalid Mahmoud declined an on-camera interview, but off-camera strongly disputed any involvement in driving an unauthorized cab or overcharging customers. Though, in the garage behind his apartment was a car with one of the license plates listed in the city database complaints. We repeatedly asked the city's BACP about those complaints and a number of times asked to do an on-camera interview. The BACP declined. Asked why, a spokeswoman only directed us to the city's website as an answer. So we asked 32nd Ward Alderman Scott Waguespack, who has tried unsuccessfully to tighten regulations on ride shares and taxis.
BACP could take that and should take that complaint, actively pursue it, up to the point where if criminal charges needed to be filed with the state's attorney, then they should hand it over as a whole file and say, here's what we've found.
As for Terry Khalil, her trip included memorable dinners out, a visit to the Art Institute, and that stop at Wrigley Field. Do you feel that city officials here in Chicago took your complaint seriously?
Not in the slightest. No. How could I? I just got the brush off, plain and simple.
We should note, in and around Chicago and its suburbs, there are a number of men named Khalid Mahmoud. Our story deals only with the Khalid Mahmoud who lives in Orland Park. Not only are there complaints filed against him with the city, but Amtrak police at Union Station, where Terry Khalil caught that ride, have filed charges of criminal trespass against Mahmoud in 2018 and 2019, though those charges were later dropped. Paris.
Back to Terry Khalil, she experienced the good of Chicago and unfortunately the bad side of Chicago. What did she say about coming back?
She said, Paris, it's not in her future.
All right. Carol Marine and the DePaul Center for Journalism, Integrity and Excellence, thank you very much.